Mince pies. Well, what I'm going to do is to make a mince and apple pie, but you can just use mincemeat on its own if that's what you want. So ingredients first, let's have a look. We have about 80 grams of pastry, which came off the block that I prepared yesterday. We have mincemeat. We have flour. We're only going to use a little for sprinkling to stop it sticking on the worktop. We've got some poached apple that I prepared earlier. And then for tools, we've got a teaspoon for measuring out the mincemeat, and we've got a rolling pin, and this is the base from a non-stick pie dish, which I'm simply using as a baking tray. So first things first, we take the pastry, sprinkle a little flour, push that down onto it, and then I roll it over so this is covered in flour, and then that way it doesn't stick to the rolling pin. And then just gently rolling it round like this. And you notice you can use the handles, but if you've got a pin without handles, you can just do this. And you'll notice that by rolling it round like this, you make it, very round. This is not going to look like your usual mince pies. And then what I do now is, well, it's still fairly thick, I turn it over, sweep up a bit more of the flour, make sure you keep it level so you don't press more on one side than the other and make it uneven. And this rolls out to quite a reasonable size. I say about the size of a good saucer, yes? And this is quite thin, and you can see that the pastry we've made is robust enough to be rolled out really thinly. And thin pastry is so much nicer because it cooks better, it cooks more evenly. Now what we're going to do is that's going to be folded in half like a pasty, which is an unusual shape, but everybody seems to like it. So what I'm going to do now is to take some of this. Now I've cheated here. This is standard shop bought mincemeat, but when I first opened it I put just a little bit of white rum in there. You don't have to do that, it's entirely optional, but it does make it just gives it that little bit of warmth, if you know what I mean, without making it significantly alcoholic. So there we go, we've got some mincemeat in there. Now the apple has to be well drained, so when you poach apple, make sure then that you drain it off, and I just drain it through a corner of the lid like that. That goes into a glass, makes a rather nice little drink for the chef, for his perks, and you don't get too much wet. If you have too much wet in there, it makes the pastry soft, and something you really do not want with pastry is a soggy bottom. And there we go, so there's our filling. Notice we spread it out, and it's basically to one side. It's more or less all to one side of the centre line. It's not too close to the edges. And then what we can do, sometimes maybe with a little apple juice, and having clean hands, I tend to do this with a finger. You just use a finger and just gently do this. Now some people like to use a brush to do this, but you can't feel. And you want it to feel slippery, but you don't want it to get soggy. Yes, and then all I'm going to do is to lift this up, fold it over, so we have a nice semicircular pasty shape. Just gently tap down in the middle so we don't get lumps in the middle, and then just press it down on the edges. There we go. Okay, now if you've got it right, you won't have a lot of juice squeezing out. I'm going to turn this around so you can see this. Now, to seal, you don't want to press down on the edge because you'll make it thin and fragile, so you pinch it in like this. So with the thumbs on top, I just pinch the edges in like this, and by using both hands, everything gets pinched twice. We'll do it again and make sure the corners here are done as well, and there we go. So that's that. So now what I'm going to do is to take a little bit more flour, sprinkle it on there, sprinkle it on here, so that when I pick it up it doesn't stick to my fingers, and that's it. This will now go into an oven about 220 degrees centigrade in a fan assisted oven for about a quarter of an hour, until it becomes golden brown. And when the pastry is golden